The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL, and also known as the UN, was originally created by the United Nations, with the adoption of Security Council Resolution 425 and 426 on 19 March 1978, to confirm Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon, which Israel had invaded 5 days prior, restore international peace and security, and help the Government of Lebanon restore its effective authority in the area. The mandate had to be adjusted twice, due to the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982 and after the Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon in 2000. Following the 2006 Lebanon War, the United Nations Security Council enhanced UNIFIL and decided that in addition to the original mandate, it would, among other things, monitor the cessation of hostilities, accompany and support the Lebanese Armed Forces as they deploy throughout the south of Lebanon, and extend its assistance to help ensure humanitarian access to civilian populations and the voluntary and safe return of displaced persons. The first UNIFIL troops were deployed in the area on 23 March 1978. These troops were reassigned from other UN peacekeeping operations in the area. During the occupation, UNIFIL's function was mainly to provide humanitarian aid. UNIFIL's mandate is renewed by United Nations Security Council annually. Current mandate expires on 31 August 2016. Mandate: UNIFIL is tasked with achieving the following objectives: confirm the withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon, restore international peace and security, assist the Government of Lebanon in ensuring the return of its effective authority in the area. Mandating resolutions by the United Nations. The 31st of January 2006, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1655. The 31st of July 2006, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1697. The 11th of August 2006, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701. Lebanese Civil War. Prior to the 1982 Lebanon War, on 2 January 1982, 2 Ghanaian soldiers guarding a UNIFIL position were attacked by unidentified persons, and one of the soldiers was shot and subsequently died. During the 1982 Lebanon War, UN positions were overrun, primarily by the SLA forces under Saad Haddad. This was the Lebanese paramilitary force supported by the IDF in southern Lebanon. Beginning in 1985, Israel scaled back its permanent positions in Lebanon, although this process was punctuated by brief invasions and bombings, as in Operation Accountability in 1993 and Operation Grapes of Wrath in 1996. In 1999, Israel undertook a withdrawal, which concluded in 2000 and enabled UNIFIL to resume its military tasks. Post-2006 war operations. UNIFIL is currently deployed in southern Lebanon and primarily along the United Nations drawn blue line, which is the border between Israel and Lebanon. The force's activities have centered around monitoring military activity between Hezbollah and the Israeli Defense Forces with the aim of reducing tensions underlying tension along the border. UNIFIL has also played an important role in clearing landmines, assisting displaced persons and providing humanitarian assistance to civilians in the underdeveloped region of southern Lebanon. Under UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which passed as a result of the 2006 Lebanon War, its mandate and rules of engagement changed. The mandate changed to allow up to 15,000 personnel in order to assist the Lebanese Armed Forces in deploying in southern Lebanon to implement the Lebanese government's sovereignty. The rules of engagement changed to allow the troops to open fire in certain cases, mostly in cases of self-defense but also in order to protect civilians, UN personnel and facilities. The new resolution states that UNIFIL can take all the necessary action in areas of deployment of its forces, and as it deems with its capabilities, to ensure that its area of operations is not utilized for hostile activities of any kind. Quote, on the 27th of August 2006, United Nations Secretary-General Kofi Annan said that UNIFIL would not intercept arms shipments from Syria, unless requested to disobey Lebanon Maritime Task Force. The Maritime Task Force is the naval component of the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon. As of February 2012, the MTF is under the command of Rear Admiral Wagner Lopes de Moraes Zamuth of Brazil. The Brazilian frigate Constituição is the flagship of the fleet, comprising vessels from Brazil, Bangladesh, Germany, Greece, Indonesia and Turkey. After the 2006 Lebanon War, the UNIFIL Maritime Task Force was established to assist the Lebanese naval forces in preventing the smuggling of illegal shipments in general and armament shipments in particular. With its establishment in October 2006, the force was led by the German Navy, which was also the major contributor to the force. The Germans lead the MTF up until the 29th of February 2008, when they passed control over to EUROMARFOR, a force made up of ships from Portugal, Spain, Italy and France. Personnel as of the 30th of April 2008, UNIFIL employs 12,341 military personnel, supported by some 307 international civilian and 606 local civilian staff, and it is headed by Spanish Force Commander Major General Alberto Esarta. To date, UNIFIL has suffered 272 fatalities, 261 troops, 2 military observers, 5 international civilian staff, and 4 local staff. Concerns over presence and neutrality. Israeli concerns. Israel has criticized the force for, amongst other things, maintaining a dialogue with Hezbollah, which it views as a terrorist organization, for treating Israeli and Hezbollah violations of Security Council Resolution 1701 equally, while Israel views its violations of Lebanese airspace as less severe than Hezbollah's violations, including crossings of the Blue Line and rocket launchings, namely because Israel and its primary allies in the West consider Hezbollah to be a terrorist organization and not a legitimate political party, and as a result of this, declare all armed Hezbollah actions to be terroristic. UNIFIL was accused of complicity in the fatal abduction of IDF soldiers in October 2000, and Israel further blamed it for obstructing its investigation by denying the existence of, and then once the existence was leaked, refusing to supply videos of the attack for several months. Prior to the July 2006 Lebanon War, Israel had been lobbying for UNIFIL to either take a more active role vis-a-vis Hezbollah or to step out of the region. UNIFIL also came under criticism during the 2006 Lebanon War for broadcasting detailed reports of Israeli troop movements, numbers, and positions on the website, which could have exposed Israeli soldiers to grave danger, while making no such reports about Hezbollah. UNIFIL's actions could have been motivated by the fact that Israel was, as a response to Hezbollah rocket fire and to the kidnapping of Israeli soldiers, conducting a ground invasion of Lebanon at the time. Israel was concerned when it was reported that Indonesia was being considered to replace Italy as commander of UNIFIL's naval force, as Indonesia does not recognize Israel, and the two countries have no diplomatic or military relations. Israel expressed concern that cooperation with the IDF, especially the Israeli Navy, could deteriorate. A 2010 book published by Norwegian journalist _The revealed that the Norwegian army was complicit in the escape of two Lebanese men who were arrested by the Israeli army and being held in Qom prison. According to the book, in 1992, two detained Lebanese men escaped from Qom prison, fearing that they would face torture or execution if caught by the Israel Defense Forces of South Lebanon Army. The soldiers dressed the detainees in UN uniforms, and placed them in a UNIFIL convoy which left southern Lebanon through Israeli roadblocks. Shortly afterward, Israeli Army Commander Moshe Tamir visited the Norwegian battalion's camp, and accused Norwegian Commander Hagerup Haugland of sheltering terrorists. Immediately after the confrontation, the Lebanese men were smuggled onto a bus used by Norwegian peacekeepers on leave, which took them to Beirut. Hezbollah concerns. Hezbollah supporters have accused UNIFIL of siding with Israel, especially since the passage of Resolution 1701, which they view as one-sided. On the 16th of October 2006, Lebanon's top Shiite cleric Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Mohammed Hussein Fadlallah declared that the UN force had come to protect Israel, not Lebanon, echoing the sentiment of the leader of Hezbollah, Syed Hassan Nasrallah, who previously said, "They are ashamed of us, brothers and sisters. They are ashamed of saying they came to defend us, but they talk about defending Israel." Conflict in 2006. According to UNIFIL press releases, there have been dozens of such incidents of UN posts coming under fire during the 2006 Lebanon War. In his 21st of July 2006 report about the UNIFIL activities 21 January 18 July 2006, the UN Secretary-General stated that some Hezbollah positions remained in close proximity to United Nations positions, especially in the Hula area, posing a significant security risk to United Nations personnel and equipment. Combat-related incidents. On the 17th of July, a UNIFIL international staff member and his wife were killed when Israeli aircraft bombed the Hush district of Tyre, Lebanon. On the 23rd of July, Hezbollah fire wounded an Italian observer. On the 25th of July, Hezbollah opened small arms fire at a UNIFIL convoy, forcing it to retreat. On the 25th of July, 4 soldiers from the Ghanaian battalion were lightly injured after an Israeli tank shell hit a UNIFIL position during fighting in southern Lebanon on the 24th of July 2006. Shrapnel from tank shells fired by the IDF seriously wounded an Indian soldier on the 16th of July 2006. On the 25th of July 2006, 4 UNTSO observers from Austria, Canada, China and Finland were killed by Israeli strikes on an OGL patrol base near Qom in southern Lebanon. According to the UN, the Israelis stated they were responding to Hezbollah fire from that vicinity, and the 4 had taken shelter in a bunker under the post. The area around the site was hit by a precision-guided bomb from an Israeli jet and shelled a total of 14 times by Israeli artillery throughout the day, despite warning calls made by UN personnel to the IDF. However, General Alain Pellegrini, then commander of UNIFIL, claims that he attempted to call Israeli officials 5 or 6 times, but never got past the secretaries. Later, Israeli artillery shelling resumed as a rescue team tried to clear the rubble. On the 29th of July, 2 Indian soldiers were wounded when the post was damaged during an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon. On the 6th of August, a Hezbollah rocket hit the headquarters of the Chinese UNIFIL contingent, wounding 3 Chinese soldiers. On the 12th of August, a Ghanaian soldier was wounded when Israeli artillery shelled the area near the village of Haris. Reinforcements. Following the ceasefire, the UNIFIL will receive vast reinforcement, up to 15,000 men, and heavy equipment. France is committed to increase her complement from 400 to 2,000 men and send Leclerc heavy tanks and AMX-30 Gold 1 fluoride self-propelled artillery, in addition to the forces deployed in Operation Ballast. Italy will send 3,000 troops. Qatar will send between 200 and 300 troops. A naval component of UNIFIL was set up to assist the Lebanese Navy preventing arms proliferation to Hezbollah. This force is under the command of a German admiral, with the majority of vessels being provided by the German Navy. The Indonesian contingent received 12 VAB on the 17th of February 2007, as the part of the second wave of shipment from the agreement between the French and Indonesian governments. Amongst the equipment sent with the second wave of VABs are 10 toolboxes, 10 armored vehicle radio communications unit, HMG shooter shield, and 40 water jerry cans. On the 16th of March 2009, Crede Ponegoro, a Sigma-class corvette, joined UNIFIL Naval Task Force. On the 13th of April 2010, the Indonesian contingent received 13 Pindad Ano APCs for UNIFIL service. Confrontations with Israel. On the 22nd of September 2006, French Air Force jets were seen over the skies of Beirut during Hassan Nasrallah's victory speech, possibly trying to protect him from an Israeli assassination attempt. Nasrallah told the crowd that he had no fear in addressing the masses directly, rather than through armored glass. In September 2006, Hezbollah fighters raided an Israeli arms depot in Shamera and made off with a large quantity of sidearms, grenades, anti-tank weapons, and Lao rockets. 5 Israeli Merkava tanks, an armored bulldozer, and a number of military vehicles entered Lebanon and attempted to search the Hezbollah-controlled village of Marwahan for the arms. They were confronted by 4 French Army Leclerc tanks, which blocked their advance. The confrontation lasted for half an hour. According to American and German correspondents, the French retreated, while the French commander claimed that the Israelis had turned back. French commander of UNIFIL Alain Pellegrini stated that France would not intervene to disarm Hezbollah. Following the war, Hezbollah was widely reported to be rearming with the help of Iran and Syria, which were reportedly smuggling weaponry and munitions into Lebanon to replenish Hezbollah's depleted stocks. Israel accused UNIFIL of failing to prevent Hezbollah's rearmament and thus failing to implement Resolution 1701. The Israeli Air Force began flying reconnaissance sorties over Lebanon to monitor Hezbollah's rearmament, with Israel announcing they would continue until Resolution 1701 was fully implemented. This led to repeated confrontations with UNIFIL. On the 3rd of October 2006, an Israeli fighter jet penetrated the 2 nautical mile defense perimeter of the French Navy frigate Courbet without answering radio calls, triggering a diplomatic incident. Israel apologized after official protests from the French government. On the 24th of October, 6 Israeli Air Force F-16 jets flew over the German Navy intelligence ship Ulster, patrolling off Israel's coast just south of the Lebanese border. The German Defense Ministry said that the planes had given off infrared decoys and one of the aircraft had fired 2 shots into the air, which had not been specifically aimed. The Israeli military said that a German helicopter took off from the vessel without having coordinated this with Israel, and denied vehemently having fired any shots at the vessel, and said as of now it also had no knowledge of the jets launching flares over it. Israeli Defense Minister Amir Peretz telephoned his German counterpart Franz Joseph Young to clarify that Israel has no intention to carry out any aggressive actions against the German peacekeeping forces in Lebanon, who are there as part of UNIFIL to enforce an arms embargo against Hezbollah. Germany confirmed the consultations, and that both sides were interested in maintaining good cooperation. The Ulster's crew had recorded several overflights by Israeli jets in the previous weeks, but claimed that the Israeli aircraft had always stayed at high altitude. The week before the incident, Israeli jets had confronted a German naval helicopter, but turned back after the Germans identified themselves. Shortly after the war, UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan, reporting to the Security Council, stated that there were no serious incidents or confrontations, but that peacekeepers reported Israeli flyovers almost on a daily basis. UNIFIL Commander Alan Pellegrini claimed that Israeli flyovers violated the ceasefire and Lebanese sovereignty, and warned that if the diplomatic efforts to stop the overflights failed, force might be used to stop them. Israeli military sources reported that Israel would bomb UNIFIL positions if Israeli aircraft were attacked. On the 23rd of October, sources in the Israeli defense establishment said that intelligence gathered by the Saudis had revealed that Hezbollah was rebuilding its military infrastructure. Israeli Defense Minister Amir Peretz told the cabinet that surveillance flights over Lebanon would continue in light of the fact that arms smuggling between Syria and Lebanon continued. On the 31st of October 2006, 8 Israeli F-15s flew over many areas of Lebanon, including Beirut. The jets also flew over a French position in Lebanon. According to the French Defense Minister Michel Alliot-Marie, the planes came in at what was interpreted as an attack formation, and the peacekeepers were 2 seconds away from firing at the jets with an anti-aircraft missile. On the 6th of September, during a European Union meeting in Brussels, the French Defense Minister announced that the Israeli Air Force had stopped mock air attacks over UNIFIL positions. On the 17th of November, 2 Israeli F-15s overflew UN positions at low altitude and high speed, while 2 reconnaissance planes circled the headquarters of the French battalion. French peacekeepers responded by readying their anti-aircraft batteries, and warned that Israeli warplanes conducting mock attacks could be fired on. The IAF continued its reconnaissance flights over Lebanon, and despite strong protests, UNIFIL peacekeeping forces did not follow through on the threats to fire at Israeli aircraft. The Lebanese government reported hundreds of overflights by Israeli aircraft, and also claimed that Israeli troops had illegally crossed the border dozens of times, including into the disputed Shabaa Farms area. Post-conflict situation. On the 24th of June 2007, 6 UNIFIL soldiers were killed after the vehicle was hit by an explosive device. 2 others were injured in the incident. No group has yet admitted responsibility. The Israeli military believed the attack to be the work of Al-Qaeda global jihad members. The Israeli ambassador to the UN, Ambassador Dan Gillerman, met with UNIFIL Commander Marj. Gen. Claudio Graziano on 15 August 2008, after Israel was accused of unilaterally violating United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 by the almost daily overflights of Lebanese airspace, the continued occupation of the village of Gaza and Israel's refusal to submit maps of areas on which it dropped cluster munitions during the 2006 Lebanese War. Following the war, British military historian John Keegan predicted that Israel would in the future invade Lebanon and continue attacking until Hezbollah's system of tunnels and bunkers was completely destroyed, as Israel would not tolerate a zone of invulnerability occupied by a sworn enemy, or a double threat posed by Hezbollah and Hamas rockets, and that Israel might first attack the Gaza Strip. Keegan noted that any IDF entry into southern Lebanon would risk provoking a clash with UNIFIL, but that it is unlikely to deter Israel, as it tends to behave with extreme ruthlessness when national survival is at stake. In 2010, a series of standoffs and clashes erupted between UNIFIL troops and Lebanese villages in the border region. Villagers accused French peacekeepers of provocative and intrusive patrols, and of taking pictures of people inside the homes. People of Itarun town, Marjayoun, accused the French regiments of driving the heavy vehicles through the 2-month-old tobacco fields, which support many families. UNIFIL was also accused of having stepped up its patrols and of failing to coordinate with the Lebanese army. In July 2010, the most serious incident occurred when the French regiments decided to carry out exercises unilaterally, without Lebanese units or other regiments. When they went into narrow alleys of Lebanese villages, some residents first tried to redirect them out of the private areas. The French fired against the civilians, also arrested a youth driving a motorcycle and destroyed the vehicle. When other civilians saw that, they surrounded and attacked the UNIFIL French troops, and without any weapons. The vehicle's windows were also smashed by stones from dozens of civilians of all ages, and the French commander was wounded. The French troops were forcibly disarmed by the villagers, and weapons were then handed over to the Lebanese army. The French unit could not explain why they behaved unilaterally. Their ambassador to the UN said the civilian attack was not spontaneous. Many troops, including the Finnish, Irish, Qataris and Indonesians, pulled out of the UNIFIL back in 2007-2008. One reason quoted as some were there for over 30 years because of fear of change of the rules of engagement by the NATO forces joining after August 2006, and because of German and French high-level statements expressing unlimited support to the Israeli side. At the request of the United Nations, 7,000 additional Lebanese soldiers were deployed to South Lebanon as approved by the Lebanese cabinet. UNIFIL force in 2010 Israel-Lebanon border clash. The 2010 Israel-Lebanon border clash occurred on 3 August 2010. This clashes marked the deadliest incident along the border since the devastating 2006 Lebanon War. The UN force stationed in southern Lebanon urged maximum restraint following the clashes along the so-called Blue Line, a UN-drawn border separating Lebanon from Israel. UNIFIL peacekeepers were in the area where the clashes took place. United Nations peacekeepers tried to hold off the routine Israeli tree pruning that led to a deadly border clash with Lebanese soldiers. An Indonesian UN battalion was on the scene, and they did their best to try to prevent it, but they were unable to. Indonesian peacekeepers tried to no avail to calm the situation before the clashes erupted. However, the fighting were increasingly intensified, so this small contingent of UNIFIL forces were ordered to retreat to find cover, then report back to the base. The Indonesian contingent, under intense gunfire and shelling between the two opposing forces, retreated and returned to the base, but two soldiers accidentally separated from the main group and got trapped in the situation. The stunned and exhausted soldiers were helped by some locals. UN peacekeepers did not escape the confrontation unscathed. Local TV reported that in some cases, villagers attempted to block UNIFIL vehicles from fleeing the combat zone, demanding that they return and fight. However, current and former UNIFIL officials said that at that point in the conflict, it was out of peacekeepers' hands. One of former UNIFIL official also explained that he has been in these situations before, and when the opposing sides is determined to shoot each other, there's nothing UNIFIL force can do. There is also another statement from a former UNIFIL commander concerning about UNIFIL action to preserve neutrality for both sides. He stated that if UNIFIL force intervene to protect IDF, for instance, UNIFIL will be accused by Hezbollah, the people, of protecting the Israelis and collaborating with the enemy. On the other side, if UNIFIL force do the same with the Lebanese, Israel will accuse UNIFIL of collaborating with Hezbollah. Contributing countries. As of the 30th of June 2013, the total number of personnel in the mission is 9,859. A former contributor's controversy. Alan Pellegrini alleged that UN reports on Lebanon were reaching Israeli intelligence. UNIFIL was heavily criticized after villages claiming two UNIFIL soldiers from Indonesia fleeing the battleground in a taxi. Impact. The Republic of Fiji military forces were created when the United Nations invited the newly independent Fiji to send troops to serve in UNIFIL. The experience gained in Lebanon has enabled the RFMF to stage 4 coups d'etat and to govern Fiji in a military dictatorship for over 2 decades.